let's get to you on the real X's and O's. When you look at Makhachev versus Oliveira, what is the most important factor that's going to decide who's wearing that belt come Saturday night?
Oh, I mean, this is a nerd's delight when it comes to the grappling department, because you're looking at two different ideologies in the grappling game. You're looking at a guy in Islam who likes to kill the bottom leg, get his wrist rides, his pins. He's kind of the anti-jiu-jitsu guy, if you will. And then you have a guy in Charles Oliveira who can smite you from anywhere. So I think that matchup for me is very intriguing, because I like to see how both guys attack this and play this. If you ask me about the striking department, I'm going to give an edge to Oliveira and just what he's done as of late. I think his striking is a little bit crisp, a little bit more smooth in those areas, whereas Islam uses his striking very well to set up his body locks and his fit-ins. So this is a chess match for me. I think if you talk the betting line, I think it's a little wide. I would actually have favored Oliveira in this matchup just because of the skill set. But when you really break this fight down, guys, I feel like Oliveira has more tools to win this fight, whereas Islam is going to be more that, fastball type pitch, and we know it's going to be coming.
All right, Coach, let's talk about the wrestling, I think, because that's going to be the place where a lot of this is negotiated. Now, two questions, or I guess two part of the same question. One, if you were advising Islam about the best way to get his game going with the takedowns, what would you advise him? And then sort of a second part of that, we do know that he tends to like the body locks. Charles Oliveira he does have offense in the clinch as well. What will that space look like? So two-parter there.
So great question. And I think you have to utilize a little bit of the cage to your advantage if you're Islam. And what do I mean by that is when you score those takedowns, you want to use that cage as kind of this inanimate object to where he can't roll over to his back or utilize it. You want to keep Charles's feet off the cage, obviously, so he has no wall walk. But the cage can be to your advantage, too, as the guy taking people down. Now, I want you guys to understand something. Why I like the body lock a lot for my fighters is, especially for a guy like Charles Oliveira who has no problem jumping on your neck at any moment. You don't want to hang your neck in that guillotine line. But what the body lock allows you to do is kind of that air chair and step over and keep your head out of any danger from the guillotine. But what it also does, and I think it's very important to understand, when you have a guy like Islam, when you want to be anti-wrestling or anti-jiu-jitsu, within that takedown, you're going to get legs tied up. You're going to get into a split and pin or a half guard or a top Turk where you can kill a leg. And I think that's going to be very important for Islam. And I have a couple things with the Charles Oliveira side, and I'll explain that later too. But in those transitions, I think it's important to slow down Charles's scrambling abilities. And by doing so, that body lock and splitting the legs is going to be very, very important for Islam.
Eric, there's so much here to look at. It's such an evenly matched fight, but their styles contrast so well. I've said it all week. I could see either guy dominating this fight, as crazy as that sounds, because their style or Charles's ability to lure you into chaos is just insane. It's unmatched. But if you're skeptical of who Islam has fought up to this point, and if he's, you even hear Charles saying you only got this fight because of Khabib, a lot of nonsense. Anyway, they're fighting on Saturday. What would be the defense for, okay, we haven't seen Islam maybe beat a string of top 5 guys, but what have we seen that could allow you to be confident that he can elevate his style and his game plan to this level against an opponent as dangerous and historically hot as Oliveira?
Well, it's not Islam's fault for who he's fought, but what he has done in his body of work has shown, I think, the idea that this guy can be champion for a long time, right? He didn't put those people in front of him. He just did what he had to do to win. But now starts that stretch, right? We can't worry about who he fought in the resume now, but he's deserved this title fight. And we're going to see on Saturday if he belongs there. And I think he does. I think everybody that has been doubting him because of that past resume, they're going to see what he's capable of on Saturday. And we might see a long stretch of Islam Makhachev as the champion at 155. It's a great possibility.
Coach, one of the things that's interesting about, you mentioned some of the scrambling from Charles Oliveira. One of the things that's really interesting, and you're going through the tape, saw it in the Kevin Lee fight, a little bit in the Chandler fight. He's one of the very few guys who does De La Riva guard, where he weaves the outside leg and then between the other ones, he'll do like a far side De La Riva. You just don't really see a lot of guys using De La Riva. Why does he get away with it, and what is the value of it?
honestly, I think because he's such a specialty guy, and that's a great point, Luke. And I think that like there's guys in the gym, even like Max Roshkoff and guys that like right now in the UFC, like the Damian Maias, that if they have a failed shot, they have another go-to. We see Damian Maia drop the deep half guard because he's so efficient and so good there. The De La Riva might be Charles Oliveira's deep half, if you will. He might be so comfortable, such a specialist there, that he knows if I have a failed shot or if I can't score this takedown here, I can go to certain chains of transitions that I feel comfortable with. And that, to me, will be the wrinkle in this fight, Luke. I really feel like if Charles Oliveira wants to make this a scramble, why not shoot your own takedown? Why not try to put Islam Makhachev on his back? Why not incite some of these scrambles? I know it sounds crazy, guys, but where is Charles Oliveira his most dangerous? And that is the transitional submission game. So if he shoots in on Islam, and let's say he does score a takedown, but if Islam, chances are, is going to be able to get back up, it's within that transition where your neck is in play. The Darce chokes are in play. The triangle chokes, the jump in the back. Those things now become in play. So why not try to go put Islam on his back? Not to hold him down, not to try to keep him on the ground, but get those transitional submissions in play. And just like you said, Luke, he has those sweeps. He has it in his arsenal. I think that's something you might see out of him on Saturday.
You know, is it dangerous, Eric, from a coach's perspective, to hear Oliveira talk so much about, I'm going to finish him in the first round? Meaning, this is a guy that doesn't, meaning Makhachev, that doesn't regularly get into high-level back-and-forth exchanges on the feet. He's using his striking to set up the takedown. There are questions of what this fight looks like in round 4 or 5 at that point. Has there been enough grappling to remove the gas tank in the direction of Oliveira, but maybe even in Makhachev if this is a high-paced fight? From the Oliveira standpoint, are you zeroing in on hitting that chin in the first round, and that's your only focus outside of keeping your back off the canvas?
Yeah, I think because he is such a sharpshooter, and maybe this is a little bit of gamemanship. Maybe he's wanting him to feel like he's going to come out and bang, and maybe they're just sending that message out there. But I think Oliveira, from what I've seen all fight week, BC, and I don't want to stray the course, I feel like body language and the perception that I'm getting from him is he's confident in the good way. It's not like he's doing this to kind of boast. I feel like he's just actually very confident in his skill set, and a confident fighter is a dangerous one. So good on him for feeling like he can go out there and put him away. All signs point that it's probably going to be pretty difficult, but I like the fact that he's confident in that area.
Let's talk about the striking here a little bit, right? Like, there's just no doubt overall Oliveira's a better striker, and more to the point, just a more lethal one. Like, he just does a lot more damage with it. But let's play the other side here a little bit. It's like, on the one hand, Oliveira also is vulnerable. He tends to get hit, enough in fights where it creates some uncertainty. On the other hand, it's not like Islam is a get after it kind of type on the feet either. Let's assume it plays out on the feet for a round. What does it look like?
I think a lot of pull counters. I think what for Oliveira, he reminds me of just an effortless sniper. It doesn't look like he has to chamber much. When he hits his back foot, that cross is coming. I mean, it's just picture perfect form the way he throws. So I think that he might be able to draw out some of Islam's power. And when you talk about out of the open stance, right? Hitting 45-degree angles on your half-beat corners that will help you take advantage of those slip counters to be out of range, but to also be able to counter back immediately. So I can see Oliveira picking Islam apart if this stays on the feet for too long, just because of, I think, the smoothness and the way Oliveira tends to strike at length. So I think that if it stays striking, you're going to look at possibly Oliveira dropping him.
It's wild. This is going to be such a wild freaking fight. Look, people hate talking about this, but it came back up at the press conference this week. Charles kind of saying, look, I beat this guy. Hey, Khabib, like, what are you doing here, bro? You know what I mean? Look, and, like, can we get past that conversation in your eyes? Is there an inside the fight game intel you can share with us? When I see Khabib, and when he makes the pledge to mother and father, when he gives up the millions upon millions to come back and Dana's constant chasing him around, I believe the guy. If Makhachev wins, it'd be the branding of Khabib 2.0 coming at you. I like Khabib's role in this fight. You know, it's a pro wrestling type deal, having the other guy, the former champion there. But in your belief, in your heart of hearts, and you know the money that gets offered these guys at that level, can we end this conversation? He's done and never coming back. Can we just focus on these two right here in this moment?
I think you're right, BC, and I think that just because of Khabib, the man that he is and the integrity that he's shown, he feels like a guy when he says something, he's going to stick to his word. But the interesting backstory would be if Charles Oliveira goes out and smokes Islam for some reason. Would that entice him to come back and avenge that loss? That I think would be the one thing that maybe he can look at and go, okay, this would give me a reason to come back. But I feel like you're right. I feel like he's done. I think he's in a good place right now and coaching his fighters and helping his team and kind of filling that role I feel like his father would want him to fill. So I think he's content on what he's doing right now.
How impressed have you been? And he's going to be playing a big role, meaning Coach Khabib, not just in the corner of Makhachev, who's carrying on the tradition, of course, of Khabib's late father, but he's going to be with Bilal Muhammad against Sean Brady.
Yeah.
What have you liked from a coach's standpoint, seeing the transition Khabib has made?
Oh, I've been in the room with them. So I've seen, he was here at the PI, and I don't remember who was in camp. But, he was running practices out here, and I asked him if I can come by and just hang out and watch practice. He said, absolutely. And it gave me a lot of details and insight on some of the things that maybe I'm doing wrong or maybe I can help or change some of my game. But it was very regimented. There was no talking. I don't even remember music being on, but the warm-ups were long. The rounds were long. And I'll give you a little backstory. There was a guy that was not invited to the practice. He came with another fighter that was there. It was not okayed by Khabib. And it was somebody that just brought a friend almost thing. And Khabib chewed out damn near everybody there for allowing this and without asking permission for this said fighter to be there. And it just kind of made me realize just how tight-knit this group is. There's no bullshit going on. And, man, I'll tell you what, for an hour and a half, it was hard damn work. And he believes that grappling is the key to damn near everything to being successful in MMA. And we come from that same ideology and lineage here at Xtreme Couture. But I'll tell you what, it was a different style than what I've ever seen, and I was impressed.
All right, Coach. Tell me what we're talking about. Two elite fighters. Someone asked me the other day, like you just termed, like in terms of like skill for skill, it's one of the best matchups in UFC history, which I don't think is necessarily unfair. But that also means that because they're not perfect fighters, they have weaknesses. Biggest weakness either guy has?
Well, I think for me with Islam, he needs to stay the course in this fight. Now, I wouldn't say this is his weakness because we might never really seen this, but like BC brought this up earlier, if this somehow turns into a knockout, drag out, and all of a sudden it turns into a striking affair, he needs to still continue to stay the course when it comes to the grappling because his level changes and his feints will have some validity. So I think for me with Islam, and it's the unknown, it's can he stay that course? Can he follow that game plan? Even though it might not be going his way, it's important for him to still stay on those feints and level changes to make the Oliveira striking slow down because he feels like he has to defend the takedown. So kind of the unknown, if you will, for Islam. And Oliveira, man, he still gets hit. I believe he's been dropped. He was dropped in the Chandler fight. He was dropped in the Poirier fight. He got sat down in the Gaethje fight. He's getting hit. So to me, I feel like he needs to make sure he gets his head off center line and doesn't take pictures after his combinations. He's got to move his feet either side to side or those 45-degree angles like we talked about versus somebody out of the open stance. That to me is Oliveira's biggest weakness is he's still getting hit in these fights.
That's interesting. I want to transition that point because that's a fear. Look, I have a fear that Charles, he hasn't been doing it with magic. He hasn't been doing it with mirrors. He's been doing it with balls. But again, this will be his 32nd fight, 9th most all time in UFC history. He's 32, but he's been through the wars. I'm not saying we'll see a major drop off here. I'm just saying you can only gamble on that style for so long before you get clipped. He almost got clipped against Chandler. But what if I told you this? These super elite guys from Dagestan, I don't see them tap. I don't see them get tired. They're machines. They have a game plan that is negative and anti to everything you do. So if Charles is riding this long win streak, and in particular the last 6 fights have been dynamic, but he's been fighting guys who are very willing to exchange in the sex if you offer it to him. I'm talking about Kevin Lee, Gaethje, Poirier, Chandler. I'm talking about guys that if you serve them that, you offer me a hot dog behind the scenes and no one's watching, Eric, I'm not going to worry that my liver's black at the moment. I'm probably going to eat it. Dude, these guys don't willingly, meaning these wrestle-heavy cyborg fighters, they don't willingly enter into this. Is it going to be as easy as everyone thinks that Charles is just going to go out there, high volume, take chances, and we're going to see a brawl on the feet? I don't see Islam in these type of fights for a reason, I believe.
And I'm with you, and I think that is the key to success for Islam, and that's actually in my notes, man, is stay the course and make this fight ugly. No one's going to boo him in Abu Dhabi, right? But you want the crowd to kind of just be like, oh, here we go, another takedown, and look at him killing the legs again, and backside wrist, and here goes the ground and pound. If he's doing those things and it starts to become downhill, I think you're going to see Islam be able to get that finish in round 4, round 5, just because of that steady ground and pound, that steady dose. We tell our guys in our gym, man, if it's a 3-round or 5-round fight, there's nothing worse in the world for somebody to beat you for 14 minutes and 58 seconds and find that finish in the 3rd round. Because there's no excuse, guys. There's no, I got caught. No, you got your ass whooped for the entirety of the fight by another man, and then you got finished. That is Islam's style. He wants to inflict punishment over and over and over until you go, you know what, man? I'm good with this shit. Get me the hell out of here. So I think he's just really got to stay that course no matter what. Don't turn this thing into a firefight. Stay the course and you win this fight.
All right, let's talk about now the co-main event, another title fight at bantamweight. TJ Dillashaw, the former champion, taking on the reigning champion Aljamain Sterling. I know you've worked with Sterling personally. First of all, just give me a sense of his overall technical development, number one, like what you've seen from him as you've worked with him, what he really excels at in your mind. And number two, how does that match up with what TJ does really well?
They both kick really well, I'll tell you that. And Aljamain's kicks are a little, so this is a very crazy matchup for me because you guys know my relationship with Coach Ludwig. You know, I'm belted under Dwayne, so there's a lot of lineage there. There's a lot of, X's and O's when it comes to this matchup for me. But on paper, I think when you look at the matchup style, I would venture to guess, and I don't know the stats, but I would venture to guess Aljamain's probably 75% more kicks than he is to punches. He loves to use his kicks to find his range, to set up his distance, but also to find ways to set up his fit-ins off of those kicks. Whereas TJ likes to throw his kicks as an add-on. He's beautiful with the same side head kicks in what we call the Condit. Well, he'll throw the right cross and roll his head through the kick that Carlos Condit dropped GSP with. So TJ has these add-ons with it. And then we saw TJ utilize his kicks very well against Corey Sandhagen, and that was to negate some of that movement, was chopping that low kick. So both styles, I think their kick game kind of gets their striking going. So there's a lot of similarities when I see both of these guys. But really for Aljo, to me, his kick game is to utilize his distance to maintain, and then sometimes to close his distance to set up his fit-ins.
Eric, how did you get associated with Aljo, and what is the future for him in splitting time in Las Vegas with you and back with Coach Longo where he started?
So this is kind of a product of COVID and then with Aljo's injuries that he had with his neck and his shoulder. So we were really one of the gyms that, I wouldn't say that we were open, but it was kind of like the speakeasy, if you will, during COVID. We had fights. Guys were fighting, and we had to train. So what we would do is we'd set up our camps and bring people in, and Aljamain reached out to me and asked if I was available to work some of his stuff, and while he was in Vegas. And it was almost like a sit-down job interview, and it worked out great because I understood my role. What do you need me for, and what are you expecting out of me? And that was kind of, what was laid out. He said, hey, when I'm in Vegas, I want you to run my camp, but I need you in communication with Coach Longo and Matt Serra back in Long Island. He goes, I really don't know what I'll do for my corner most of the time. I'll probably have like Marab and some of the guys that I use as training partners, but Ray will always be there. And I think for me as a coach, it's refreshing just to know and understand your role. So he did, I believe it was 7 weeks or 8 weeks out here with us at the PI and at Xtreme Couture. And I kind of help navigate him day by day, if you will. So I know what his Mondays are like. Was set up his sparring on Thursdays. I hold pads for him on Tuesdays. We got cardio rounds on Saturdays. And then he'll set up all of his stuff over the UFC PI. We'll film everything. We'll send it over to Coach Longo. And then when he goes back to Long Island, it's kind of reverse engineered. Everything he does there, he films, sends it over to me. I'll break down the tape, and we'll get on a FaceTime call over the weekend and kind of run through everything.
I mean, look.
All right, Coach. Sorry, go ahead, BC. No,
take
it's okay.
over, take over.
All right. In that case, the single leg. It's the big weapon of Aljamain Sterling, right? He has other takedowns. I want to be very, very clear. But against Jan, for example, the single leg was really key to getting that fight where he wanted it to be, which was the back and everything else. How did that be? Like, why is that such a favored weapon of Aljamain Sterling? Why the single leg?
I think because of the chain wrestling off of it, and it gives you two different paths. You can run back to the double, but essentially that body lock series as well. And I think just because it's something that if you're going head inside single like we talked about in the fight with Oliveira and Islam, it keeps you out of that guillotine neckline. But I think to me, because of Aljamain's style and he's kind of scrambly when it comes to his wrestling, the ability to transition and chain wrestle, Luke, I think that single leg gives you that option.
BC?
Yeah, this is when you're game planning for somebody like TJ. He's been through the physical and mental ringer, and some of it has been self-induced. We know about his background and the history, but it's like long layoffs, surgery, come back looking like he's never aged, and as we saw against Sandhagen, finding an inner grittiness to overcome that leg injury and just figure out a way to win that. When you're looking at how to game plan for somebody like him, we know what he's accomplished, but how close to the prime is 36-year-old TJ Dillashaw? Because my casual eyes haven't seen much slippage. How do you guys gauge that?
I agree with you 100%. And look, as a coach, I personally don't look at the bulletin board material. None of that shit bothers me or I care about one bit. I got to look at the guy in front of us and what his skill set and his talent tells me on tape. And what we saw against Corey Sandhagen is we saw a guy who's just like that, BC. He looks like he's in his prime. He finds ways to win fights. He has great in-fight adjustments between him and Coach Ludwig. So to me personally, I think he is right back where he belongs. He is just as dangerous as he ever has been. I don't think you want to sit too much on the fact that he's been gone or this or that, because in that 2 years time span, he might have been evolving and changing and shaping his game behind the scenes and things that we don't really see. So I got to look at what I see on tape, and against that Corey Sandhagen fight, he's just as good as he's ever been.
What's the best explanation for why Aljo can so readily find mount or the back?
I think he does such a good job of finding his pit stops, Luke, in certain ground positions. He's not in a hurry to get from point A to point B. He feels like when you grapple with him or you watch him in the room, he'll suffocate that position. And what he'll do there is make you decide, and he'll know the route before you go there as the defender. So let's say he's in that half guard position and he's working something. So if you're going to turn to the inside or the outside, he has an answer for each. And then when he's in the mount position, he's going to sit there and he's going to make you work. He's going to let his ground and pound allow for you to go belly down. And we never see him really stay too attached to guys or glued to guys. He's kind of floaty on you. So when you go belly down, right there in that transition, now he's able to get his body lock or his body triangle on you. So I think for me, he kind of always understands that next route. He's like a step or two ahead of you in the grappling game. And he's never in a position where he's rushed. And I feel like that's important because we get a lot of guys in here that want to go, almost like they're breakdancing on you. But to me, Aljamain understands his pit stops and the reason why he gets there, and then the reason why he flows in the next position is really because of what the fighter on bottom will give to him.
Man, I love this fight. This could be the fight of the night. I mean, this is the sleeper, Eric. This is the gem. This is the one, man.
I agree, man.
Damn. All right.
Like, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing, Coach. Like the main event could go long, probably won't go long. I feel like this one could go long, the co-main, right?
I feel like I can go long, but what I'm excited for is those mid-fight adjustments, because we've seen TJ make those mid-fight adjustments, and we've seen Aljamain make those mid-fight adjustments. So the X's and O's for me is really where I like to see how they make these adjustments if something goes wrong. If your game plan's not working, what do you have in your back pocket that you can pull out and go out and get a victory? And let's be real, this is Aljamain's officially first title defense. And Randy Couture always hammered this to me. He said, man, the hardest fight of any fighter's career is the first title defense. So I'm interested to see what both guys have in store.
Can we imagine Aljo's wrestling taking the back of Dillashaw with the consistency and danger and threat that he put on Jan, which was surprising to me in the moment? Are there differences in the wrestling bases of Jan and Dillashaw, which means that plan A may not be there?
I think you're going to see Aljamain find the back in this fight. I really do. And what's interesting about this is when he gets there, to me it's like the round's over. We have another guy in the gym in Patchy Mix. When Patchy gets on your back, it's the most difficult guy. It's just guys can't get out, and they're stuck there. And I think that's the thing that Luke alluded to in that where he's not in a rush to get directly to your back. There's pit stops there that allow him to get there. And by that time, there's 3 minutes off the clock. Now you got 2 minutes with him on your back. So if he can salt these rounds out and be able to get to those backside positions versus TJ, it's going to be an interesting task for TJ and how he wants to make those adjustments. But I feel like he can get there, BC. I really do. I feel like Aljamain's got enough tricks. We saw that in the Jan fight. Drive up the single leg, get to that body lock series, hop over to the back. Maybe it's off of a failed takedown where it's off a transition, off a knee tap. I mean, he has his abilities to get there. So I feel like it's going to be important for TJ not to allow Aljo to get there because the round's going to be over.
All right, quickly on the flip side of that, if TJ can keep this fight on the feet, if I told you it's going to be a 5-round kickboxing match, I think naturally we would go, okay, TJ's a little bit more versatile, has more ways to win. What are we missing about Aljamain Sterling's striking game? Because he made a leap against Yang that shut up all the doubters, but he did it on the ground most effectively. What if he has to do it on the feet against TJ? What does that look like?
Well, I think Aljamain has actually very good vision. In the fight against Jan, I believe he got clipped with a switch uppercut. Unfortunately for me, I'm from that Dwayne Ludwig pedigree, so a lot of the things and the tricks in this that I've learned over the years, we were able to kind of replicate. Will they have new wrinkles in their game? Absolutely. But it was my job to be able to get our training partners and our guys in our room to try to replicate some of the things that TJ does. And I hope we did well enough so that they were able to see those things, that Aljamain was able to get those reads. So in that, if it stays striking, I'm pretty confident that Aljamain's going to be okay on his feet. And I think, honestly, Aljo does such a good job in there in creating car crashes where we've been using a lot of elbows and linear things up the midline, the knees up the midline, to where if that fight makes a crash in the middle, I think we have some offense that can be able to answer some of that.
Coach, we actually have a question here from one of our the viewers from MK. I want to start incorporating these if I can here a little bit. This comes to us from Sage the Dragon Senpai. I guess that's his name. Eric, is Aljamain Sterling the best at creating back exposure in the UFC? If so, why?
I would say, yeah. I mean, right now, I think he definitely is. I think that he's a guy that, he hunts for that position. Now, he's a guy, I think that when he gets there, his body lock series, the body triangle that he puts on, he's not necessarily always looking for the choke, but he has efficient ground and pound from there. The one thing that he does very well, and this is something, if you go back and watch Kevin Lee loved getting to that body lock, but what he loved to do with it was flatten you out and go belly down and then hip in on you. And when he does that, the ground and pound is evident. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize, the torque that it does on your lower half, your torso and your spine, man, it makes you want to tap just there alone. So I think his positional control, the way he's able to get to the back, but he does, Aljamain kind of has this almost floaty transitional thing where if you do get your back to the mat, he's right back up on top of you on mount, and then he's able to go to that gift wrap and re-transition back over. So I think that his ability to transition from A to B makes him one of the better guys on the back series.
All right, Coach, let's hit you with Piotr Jan, Sean O'Malley. It's already been said this is the number one contender fight. Next guy gets the title shot. Sean O'Malley, if he does Sean O'Malley things, you got to believe he can win this fight. He's a plus 225 underdog according to DraftKings. But we saw a little touch-up at the and I want to ask you if this matters, because when I'm watching, I got pro wrestling eyes. It's just the way I was raised, okay? So I see that shit, I jump up. Do we have the video to throw to here of Petr Yan and O'Malley? Because I want to ask you, is this a moment? Is this something to look into? Or is this nothing here of when they went face-to-face? Because, Coach, skill for skill, you gotta like Jan and the experience and what he's proven. But there's some emotion in there. Is that a bad thing?
It can be. And here's the thing with Petr Yan is we thought in the Aljamain fight number 2 that Jan would come out and fight emotional. And we wanted that. And we kind of did see that a little bit out of him. Now, is that emotion going to carry over? And is that the same thing that we saw in the Aljo fight? This actually might work out in his favor if he comes in emotional. Let me explain to you that, BC, is because Jan does not have the luxury of having a 5-round fight this time around. He traditionally starts slow. Round 1 is going to be very, very important for both of these fighters. If Sugar Sean can steal round 1, Sugar Sean has a skill set to go and be a sniper and pick off Petr Yan from the outside and just win round 2. And he can do cartwheels in round 3 and win this fight. So I think it's important for Petr Yan not to come out slow and be as technical and get all of his data and collect his reads. I think it's going to be important for Petr Yan to come out here right away, maybe take the first minute, but he's got to get round 1, and he's got to set a tone and an emphasis that he's there to fight. So coming out emotional in this fight for Yan might favor him, BC.
Nice. All right, Coach. What about the idea, though, that there's wrestling? Jan can strike. I think on the feet, he probably, certainly Sean O'Malley is very, very good there, but Jan's very good there as well. It's the other part where Jan has incredible takedowns, ability to find it, and to work from top position. He's got good ground and pound. If you were advising Jan, would you advise him to wrestle a fair amount in this contest?
Well, gentlemen, I advise everybody to wrestle. But yes, and that's exactly what I have in my notes, guys, is there's some unknowns there. And there's some unknowns with Sugar Sean, and that is in the wrestling department. The other unknown is the wrestling cardio. And we all know this, boys. Like, we've been in this room. We understand what it's like. There's a big difference between the striking cardio, and there's a big difference between getting a dude off of you cardio and wrestling and getting up and then getting taken back down. We haven't seen him tested in that department. So why not go out and look to out-wrestle this guy in the first round? What does it do? Well, it makes you pummel. It makes you work. It adds blood in your arms. It takes some of the sting off your punches. It starts to make you question your game plan. You're stuck on bottom. You have long extremities to where if you're Petr Yan, you're able to kill a leg. You're able to sit in that half guard, and you're able to apply some ground and pound. Luke, I'm with you, man. I think it's important for Jan to come out and wrestle. That's in my notes, too. I think you want to slow this fight down. I think you want to make sure you put a exclamation point on round 1, and you want to send Sugar Sean back to the corner with a cut over his eye and blood running down his face and set that tone and precedence right away in round 1 if you're Petr Yan.
This is great insight. Coach, I could have you here all day. I know you're a busy man. Do you have time for any more fan questions, or should we exit now?
I carved a whole hour out for you guys because I was so excited, so I wanted to make this.
All right, I want to get the fans involved because you're a connected guy, you're a smart guy. Let's go over to Captain V on Discord. He asks, what holes, if any, do you see in Jon Jones's game and fight style? And I'm going to add in, as it pertains to moving up to the heavyweight division at this point in his career after the long layoff. Any things that scare you in terms of his game that might not adapt so well at this weight?
Well, you guys are asking me to give away some of my secrets here, but
fair point. The fans want to know, Eric. Okay, you got to tell them.
Yeah. I would venture to guess the unknown right now for Jon Jones is because by the time he ends up fighting, it might be 3 years since we've seen him last in the cage, and we have to be honest and transparent. The Dominic Reyes fight, the Thiago Santos fight, it didn't feel as if it was the Jon Jones of the past. Now, is that because he was uninterested? Is that because he wasn't training the way he needs to be training? Could be. Could definitely be. But I don't want to allow, I would say I don't want him to allow, I want us to be the first fight for Jon Jones in the heavyweight division for many, many reasons. But number one is because Jon is so good at adapting and understanding. If he fought Stipe before us, and let's say he wins that fight, but has some hiccups in that fight, he's able to go back to the drawing board and fix those things.
Yes.
I want him to have to figure that shit out with 275-pound Francis Ngannou standing in front of him, ready to take his head off. You got to figure that shit out right now with us in that cage. So there's things that I've seen that I think we can exploit. There's things that I've seen that can ultimately be, the reason why Jon wins this fight. But it's my job as the coach to hide those holes or to fix those holes or to make those holes some of our advantages like we saw in the Ngannou fight. So the unknown for me is what is Jon Jones doing behind the scenes with Brandon Gibson, a great coach, great friend. I got to believe that these guys are adding new tools and getting that experience in, but there's nothing like the experience you get being in the cage with the heavyweight champion staring in front of you, and you got to figure that shit out right then and there.
Oh, put that in Raider Stadium, please. Let's make this the Super Bowl of MMA. I got a phoner over here.
Wow. Coach, from someone who calls himself Who MMA, he asks, when Francis Ngannou hit the Metzger takedown on Cyril, I almost jumped through my ceiling. What's one of the most joyful moments you can remember of a fighter executing a surprising technique in a fight that they worked hard on in training?
Well, I think that would, obviously that has to reign pretty high. We in the gym saw this for about 2 years, and it was under wraps, and there was grumblings about it because we saw what Francis Ngannou was doing even in the Stipe fight. We had to tell this guy, you got to let this guy up. They're TKOs. No one can get up off of the bottom with him, and I'm talking accomplished high-level UFC fighters that are ranked. Not going to throw them under the bus and name names, but it was impressive to see, to the point where guys from the UFC PI were coming over to watch the sparring rounds and going, are you looking to take Stipe down and beat him up? And I'm like, it's a possibility, I'm telling you. We wanted to throw wrinkles in his game because we knew that eventually when you got to the highest level and you're defending your title, somebody's going to come along and nullify your power. And if we don't have another pitch in our arsenal, if we don't have a slider or a changeup and all we have is a fastball, man, I'll tell you what, we're doing ourselves a disservice, not only as a coaching staff, but to our fighter by not allowing him to grow and put these other tools in his tool shed. So watching him be able to transition over into this, all of a sudden, Francis Ngannou, the grappler, was definitely one of my more proud moments as a coach, and being able to see him execute it live in a fight and surprise the shit out of everybody.
I mean, look, you and I were the only people that knew he was going to wrestle. It came to me in a vision, and you prepared for it. It's amazing. I want to stay there real quick, though. I think that victory by Ngannou, given the knee injury, given the contract situation, it was one of the greatest fuck you wins in the history of combat sports. How bad was his knee? Give us a feeling of, what a handicap that actually was that he had to overcome against Cyril Gane.
Well, let's put it like this, BC. Myself, Dewey Cooper, Markel Martin, every one of us felt that he should have pulled out of the fight. We're literally walking around with an NFL lineman knee brace for 4 weeks.
Damn.
So we're I know they came in and filmed a little bit of the documentary series for him. I think he's going to release it on his YouTube. But a little insight for my Morning Combat friends and family. This was the Friday. The Friday before we leave for fight week, we all sit down and have a meeting. This is at the PI. This is our last sparring session. And I get a call from Markel, our manager, and he basically puts it on my lap to say, I think we got to pull out of this fight. He's in LA. Can you be the one to kind of serve this message? And I'm freaking in tears because here we are. We put this whole camp together. We're ready to go. We're a week out away. We don't understand if we're going to fight or not. Dr. Elatraj basically calls and says he can have irreversible knee damage if he decides to take this fight. So we get back to the PI. We have this little meeting and sit down. I look over at Francis. I said, I damn near start crying. I was like, bro, we got to pull out of this fight, man. They're telling me that you might not even be able to fight again. So we have this whole long drawn out talk. Francis stops and kind of looks over and he's like, well, that kind of put a damper on sparring for the day, and one of those things. And so I said to him, I said, look, all I want for you from today, if you're going to spar, let's spar. But we got to take this knee brace off. This thing's giving you a false sense of reality. I want to see you spar without this knee brace on. Let's make one decision at a time. And I'll tell you what, guys, he goes in and spars, and it was the best I've ever fucking seen him. Like, he drops this guy 2 or 3 times. I look over at Coach Dewey, and I'm like, well, what do I say now? Like, look at him. He looks fine. So we go to LA with the understanding of, if we're going to meet Dr. Elatrage when we get there on Tuesday, if Dr. Elatrage tells us that we cannot fight, we're going to pull out of this fight. If everybody in agreement and everybody shakes their head, great, this is what we're going to do. We get there, we land, he goes and sees the doctor, he makes us all go to lunch. Calls us and says, come pick me up, we're ready to go. We get in the car, we're all waiting for our fate. He's sitting in the front seat, I'm sitting in the back seat, and I go, so, what's the word? And he leans back and he has this big smile on his face. He goes, we're fighting, boys. Right? We're all clapping, we're all cheering, whatever. So we drive for about 3 or 4 minutes later, and I'm like, so what did he say? Like, what did the doctor say exactly? Is your knee good? And he looks back and goes, fuck no. He said to pull out. My knee's shattered. I shouldn't fight this fight, but we're doing it anyway, boys.
Holy shit.
Marbles. Big marbles. I don't understand it. It's insane.
So wait, hold on. We got to follow up. So Francis wins and goes back to the locker room. What did he say about his knee or discomfort or anything? Like, what was he telling you about what he went through?
Oh, he was in so much pain in the first 2 rounds. I mean, he didn't say anything to me on the stool, but I can tell by his face and his body language that he was concerned. And he said that. He was like, man, like, I could not move. I could not plant my foot. I couldn't get any lateral movement. I couldn't track him down. I couldn't this. I couldn't that. But Francis has a fuck it switch, and I've seen him pull it. I've seen him hit it where he's like, you know what? Fuck it. I don't give a shit about my knee anymore. I don't give a shit about what the UFC said. I don't care about anything. I'm going to go win this fucking fight. And that's just kind of his mentality, guys. Like, you know, whatever he's been through in his past, there's no person I've ever met in my life that has been through the things that Francis Ngannou has been through. So when you guys saw that moment, 2-2 going into round 5, it was a sense of belief and relief for me, knowing that I knew I had the better athlete on the stool right then and there. I looked over at Gon and I go to Francis. I pointed at him when we were getting him on the stool. I think there's some, I'll try to find the video, where I made it loud and clear that Gon was broke. And I wanted Gon to hear me say it, and I wanted Francis to say it because of body language. I go, look at that motherfucker. He's broken. And we both looked over at him, and I saw Francis just go like, yep, he's broke. And Francis was tired. Francis, you know, he was just as tired as Gon. We know that. But that's something that Randy always ingrained in this room was body language. He said, I know I'm just as tired as this guy, but if I can fake it more, if I can make that guy feel like, fuck, this guy's not tired, there's a breaking point there for that other athlete. And I felt like we were able to exude that in that moment. And I knew that Francis was the better athlete in that time, and he was going to see his way through any adversity. Didn't matter if he had one leg, one arm, he was going to find a way to win that fight. And kudos to him, guys, because he deserves all that credit. And I told him that right after the fight. This win is on you. All of us said, pull out of this fucking fight. You're crazy. And if you go in here and do what you can do, and we believe in you, the moment he said we're taking that fight, at no time do we ever talk about his knee again. That's an afterthought. We don't give a shit anymore. We're riding in this thing. We're doing it together. We're not we can make any excuse, win, lose, or draw. But if you win this fight, brother, this one's on you, man. You made this shit happen, and kudos to him.
Dude, I appreciate you sharing that insight because it just adds to the legend and the
That's incredible.
The mythical folk hero that is Francis Ngannou, right? There will be a movie about him. I found the perfect fan question. I'm sorry that we have to transition to, Coach. It's from @Uber on Twitter. I don't know if that's his real name. Should ask what kids used to call him when he was growing up. Eric Nutsack had to be a top one. Look, these are the fans. I'm sorry for the lack of quality control. They want to know, okay?
I never got that one, but that one's pretty good. I might adopt that one as we go through. You know, yeah, I mean, the last name is certainly different, you know, and I would get picked on quite a bit for it. But, you know, thankfully I was kind of a big kid and, you know, no one really messed with me too much. So, yeah, but Eric, that's a pretty good one. I'll have to use that one.
Yeah, it never occurred to me either, but we're also, you know, not mentally brain damaged. So that perhaps that's why. Coach, I got to say, it's been fun having you. This is great. Oh, last one from the fans, from me, by the way, before you go here. Actually, I think it comes from our producer who's curious. Who are some up-and-coming guys at Xtreme Couture that we should be looking out for? Maybe ones outside of the UFC, maybe not even pro yet, but who do you have your eye on as that next gen Extreme Couture guy or lady?
Oh man, you guys, I got two right now, and they're contrasting fighters, and one is a Hawaiian striker named Puni Braden. He fights for LFA right now.
I met him. I met him with you.
You did meet me with him, man. And I'll tell you what, Luke, the kid, what I love about his mentality is he's been working on the things the weaknesses, right? If you scored a takedown on the kid, the round's over. But now he's chained up with another kid who's my next prospect is Kobe Fair. Kobe is a wrestler from Notre Dame, from Ohio. He is that Jake Shields prodigy that we're seeing in the gym, the ground and pound guy. But where he lacks is maybe that striking. But now we're able to put him and Puni together, these young up-and-comers, and one hand is watching the other, man. These guys are taking care of one another, but you're seeing their game elevate week by week, every day in this mat. I watched Kobe yesterday, and we went over a series we call the ball and chain from Randy. It's basically in the half guard position when the guy on bottom goes knee shield. We lace underneath the arm and ball and chain and pull and thread that top side arm through the bottom leg. And it's a awful ground and pound position to be in. So we started working some of these techniques with Kobe and watched him just literally manhandle 3 guys yesterday with this ball and chain technique and working this ground and pound. And then you go and watch Puni on the other side, who can hit from both stances. A natural orthodox guy, but we moved him over to southpaw because we wanted his strong hand up front. But by doing so in the evolution of the fight game, it's important to be able to strike from both stances, but understand the reasons why we do that. And now he's kind of taking that game and evolving into his own. And his striking is, in my opinion, one of the best in the gym. If we get a green light or we got to make somebody, somebody's got to pay in the room, it's always nice when you put the flyweight on him because he looks so unassuming. We put the flyweight on the welterweight or the middleweight guy, and we'll let Puni have his heyday with him, and I'll just cash app him $50 every time he drops somebody with a body shot.
Coach, I couldn't let you go or finish talking about Extreme Couture without getting a Cheyenne Vlismus upstate. Yeah. I mean, she's one of our favorite fighters in the game.
You are so pathetic. I mean, you're just the worst human on earth.
She brings bar fight energy to the octagon, and I can appreciate that, okay?
I'll tell you what, man, I love Cheyenne, and one of her amateur fights, she was fighting Vanessa, the girl that's actually in the UFC now, and Cheyenne probably 10-8'd this poor girl in the first 2 rounds. And Cheyenne spiral fractures her arm on a takedown, gets up and her arm is dangling and tries to hit Vanessa with her broken arm. I can't make this shit up, guys. Mark Smith looks over at me and this girl's arm is dangling and Cheyenne's don't stop the fight. I'm fine. I'm like, your arm is completely broken. That is Cheyenne Vlismus for you, boys. She's a savage.
Luke, I told you, Luke, she's coming on. I said it, okay?
Yes, I know, BC. You did say it. Coach, if folks want to get more from you and follow you on social, where can they go?
Eric_XCMMA. That's my best way to follow me. We're on Twitter, guys, and I'm pretty active on there. So if you hit me up or you got some questions about things, I'm always trying to put some technique videos out. I usually try to tag Luke in those things. But hit me up, man, if you got questions. I'm a pretty open book, so I'd love to be able to chat with you guys.
Coach, we appreciate it. Great chatting with you. UFC 280 is tomorrow. One more sleep, as Jon Anik would say. We appreciate you, sir.
Thank you so much, guys.
Coach. Hey, it's a dream come true, guys, and I mean that. I love the show. I love both of you guys, and it's been an honor to be on.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate you.
Thank you.